Hi, my name is Hannah, and I would like to share with you the story of how I nearly caused someone's death. So, by the end of the school year, my friends and I decided to make the best out of our time before school ends. Therefore, we went to wild parties, hung out at crazy places, pranked each other at every chance we got, and much more. Until one day, all this fun took a wrong turn, and we were faced with a living nightmare. It all began when Peter and I wanted to get back at Victor for making us eat cakes made with salt as a joke. So we started to plan a scheme for Victor, which was supposed to make everyone laugh. We thought of something that should make Victor super disgusted, something that he would never touch or get nearby. Eggs, Peter shouted. Everyone knew that Victor gags from eggs and can't stand their smell. I laughed at the thought of getting Victor near an egg. He would freak out like a little girl. The classic eggs prank was going to get him without a doubt. So, Peter and I hurried up to Walmart to buy as much eggs as we could carry, and brought them all back home. The plan was to tell Victor to dress up with his fanciest clothes and go for dinner at his favorite restaurant. We asked him to be ready and meet us outside his house. That way, as soon as he steps out of the door, we could hide and throw at him as much eggs as we can. Things went according to this plan. We waited and waited behind the bushes in the dark, until we saw Victor opening the door. Quickly, Peter and I started throwing one egg after another with no will to stop. We heard him screaming and asking us to stop, but our excitement was taking over the situation, and we kept on going until we were almost out of eggs. However, the voice that was asking us to stop was nothing like Victor's voice. It sounded more like an old man's voice. I screamed at Peter to stop, quickly, once I realized what we have just done. This was not Victor. This was his grandfather. The poor old man was laying on the floor and all covered with egg yolk. A moment later, Victor hurried out of the house and he was in shock. Just by looking at that scene, he realized that this scheme was in fact meant for him, but that didn't seem to ease his reaction. Actually, we never saw him angry or even scared. He was so freaked out, as if we'd just murdered his grandfather. It was only going to take a lot of cleaning to get rid of this mess, and Victor was acting overdramatic. Peter and I started to apologize for both of them and offered to clean everything, but Victor was not listening to anything we were saying. Instead, he went to grab the phone and he started dialing 911. 911? Now he was being way overdramatic. I snapped at him and said, "Victor, are you seriously calling for emergency right now?" But at that moment, Victor looked at me nervously and said, "You don't understand, Hannah. My grandpa is allergic to eggs." That moment, Victor's dramatic episode started to make sense to me. As I looked at his poor grandfather, I saw that his skin was very irritated and he was having trouble breathing normally. I wanted to cry. What have we done? I could never forgive myself if this man dies because of our stupidity. Peter looked just as frightened as me. He ran into the house to get wipes and tissues to help take off the egg yolk off of the grandfather before the ambulance arrives. When it did, they quickly took Victor's grandfather to the hospital and Victor accompanied him. Peter and I were left in the front yard of their house alone. We didn't know what to do or say to each other. We cleaned the mess and each left to their home. When I got home, I had to tell my parents about what happened. They were very shocked that I have done something like that and, even more, disappointed. They called Victor's parents immediately to apologize and check on his grandfather. According to them, his condition was stable, but not at its best. His skin was still irritated and he felt constant dizziness. My parents apologized to them one more time and hung up the phone. My parents and I decided to go to the hospital the next day to apologize properly. Despite my feeling of shame and not wanting to show my face to anyone, I knew I had to go. The next morning, as we arrived at the hospital and went to the grandfather's room, Victor was there. However, he wasn't as mad as I thought he would be. To my surprise, he welcomed me with a smile and gave me a hug. His grandpa, on the other hand, was not as happy to see me, but that was totally understandable. I said that I was extremely sorry and gave him an apology gift, which managed to get the old man smile a little. My parents stayed with him in the room to talk while Victor and I went outside. Victor told me that he knows how upset I feel and that none of this was my intention. I was extremely relieved to hear those words coming from him. I told Victor that I thought he would never forgive me and was convinced that he'll stay mad at me forever. Victor then told me that he understands that it could have happened with him too, or anyone else. The important thing was that we all learnt that next time if we want to have fun, we should also be responsible enough for our choice of actions.